Okay, I think we'll get started here. My name is Court Swearingen, the Director of Testing and Optimization here at American Eagle, and just wanted to thank you for taking your time to come out here, have a nice meal, and to get a little educated on the power of split testing and what split testing can do to help you improve your online conversions. Just briefly, a little bit about American Eagle for those of you who may not know. We're family owned and operated. The company has been around for, I think, 40 years. So for a tech company, it's like forever. And we've always been in the Chicagoland area. We've completed over 12,000 products since we started building websites. We have offices nationwide and over 300 employees now. I think it's getting close to 400 now at this point. And we also have, for the most part, our core product is delivering you websites and helping you host those websites. But about 10 years ago, we developed a strategy division that also can help you with things like your email marketing program, your PPC, your SEO. And then my division focuses solely on split testing. And these are just some of the customers that we have worked with over the past several years. And we got the ADA there. We've got an ADA person right there. Very good. So we have, we're basically platform agnostic. So, whatever platform you're interested in getting your website on, we can work with that. And I'll move on from here. So the title of this talk is Maximizing Online Conversions Through the Science of A/B Testing. And so what we'll go over today, I'll give you a definition of what A/B testing is, why you should be testing. I'll talk a little bit about the scientific method and how we use that to formulate our test ideas. We'll go through some fun case studies. A few of them, I will show you the original page and the test variation page, and I'll ask for you to vote which one you think won. See how your gut instincts work when it comes to split testing. We'll talk about what I call the 4 sort of universal testing principles. And then we'll talk about the 5 steps for successful testing. And these 5 steps are very pragmatic steps that you can start using right away when you get back into the office. I think you'll find it quite helpful. So I'll talk about maybe 40 minutes or so, then we'll leave maybe 15 minutes for questions, and then we'll have a nice meal afterwards. So a little bit about my background. I started my career as a physicist. I worked at Brookhaven National Laboratory, which is right smack in the middle of Long Island. We were researching rare particle decays. And so the scientific method has always been very heavily ingrained in me. And I got sidetracked into marketing. And over the past 5 years now, I'm bringing back that scientific method and helping people run controlled experiments on their site so that their sites constantly improve and evolve over time. I'm Google Analytics certified and Optimizely platform certified. Optimizely, if those of you may have heard what that is, that's a very well-known split testing platform. It's the split testing platform that we recommend. And I've been working in the field of marketing analytics now for over 25 years. And as I mentioned, I started the A/B testing and optimization department at American Eagle. So let's just jump right into it. What is A/B testing? A simple definition is it's running scientifically controlled experiments on your website so you can quantify which changes you're making are actually providing you more business value. So very simply, you have a page you want to improve. You come to me and I say, okay, I think if we change the headline and maybe if we change the image and maybe if we use bullet points instead of a bunch of chunks of paragraph copy, I think we can find an improvement on this page. And we split traffic. That's why it's called split testing. 50% of the people will see the original page. The other 50% will see our test variation. And we measure which one, the original or the variation, produces more business value. The benefits are it's much better than guessing. It directly will impact your revenue. And if you don't sell things on your site, it can also impact lead generation. And it also improves what I call site micro-conversion. So everybody has a primary activity you want visitors to take on your site. But most visitors aren't going to take the primary action. So what else can we get them to do before they leave your site? We can get them to maybe click on a social media icon. We can get them to maybe register for a free newsletter or register for a free demo. So all these things I call micro conversions. A/B testing can help you improve all your micro conversions. So why should you test? The big reason is because of this graphic you see here. This is the average conversion rate for a retail site, about 2.5%. So split testing will help you figure out what you're not doing right with all those blue people, right? And I'll show you in just a second, very small incremental improvements in conversion rate can have a huge effect on your revenue. And this is a great stat here. For every $92 spent on visitor acquisition, only $1 is spent on on-site conversion optimization. And I see this all the time when I'm working with clients. People spend millions of dollars a month driving people to a site that's under-optimized. And so the concept here is, why not get more out of the traffic that you're already getting to your site? So this is my favorite saying in testing. It's difficult to improve one thing 1,000%, but it's relatively easy to improve 1,000 things 1%. And this is really the basic tenet of testing. Companies out there that are most successful with their testing efforts are ones that are not just doing it for a few months and then quitting, or just doing it for a year and quitting. They're constantly testing all the time, 100, 200 tests per year. And that's where you start to get the real value out of it. So before we go into some examples here and talk about the classic scientific method, I want to show you just how small incremental improvements in conversion rate can really improve your incremental revenue. So this first row that you see here, here's a company that gets about 2.8 million visitors in a 12-month period. And this is an actual client. They have a 0.78% conversion rate. Now we know the average conversion rate for a retail site is about 2.5, 3%, so they are way under that. And this particular client is spending millions of dollars in PPC and offline direct mail and email marketing. They're driving thousands and thousands of people to their site that's only converting at 0.78%, right? So they just took a little bit of that money they're spending on acquisition and move it towards on-site optimization. They could see a huge improvement in a short period of time. So in this case, if this company goes from 0.78% conversion rate, and you notice in this table that the traffic to the site stays constant and the average order value stays constant. But if they just go from 0.78% to 0.9%, we're talking almost a $700,000 incremental revenue improvement in a 12-month period. And if they can go from 0.78% to 1.2%, you're talking almost $2.5 million of incremental revenue. So it's really important to understand you don't have to go from a 1% conversion rate to a 10% conversion rate. That's going to be difficult to do. But fairly small increases in conversion rate can really translate to a lot of additional revenue for your company. So again, I guess I would encourage you to really think about, what are you spending in your SEO and your PPC and your display advertising, and certainly not discouraging that. That's very, very important to have a nice solid acquisition strategy. But how much are you really spending on on-site conversion optimization, right? If you're driving lots of people to a site that's not converting well, think about what you can do to spend a little bit more money and try to optimize the traffic that you're already getting to your site. So we use the classic scientific method when we come up with tests. And this is the very same scientific method that you learned in grade school, right? So you ask a business question, you construct a hypothesis, a test hypothesis and a goal. You test that hypothesis to see the viability of it, and you analyze the results and formulate a conclusion. So very quickly, I'll take you through an example using an actual test that we recently ran with one of our clients. This is the Joint Commission, and they came to us and said, how can we get more people to click this request a demo button? This is very expensive software, thousands of dollars, and they found that if they can get people to take a demo of it, the conversion rate to a purchase is much, much higher. So they really wanted to focus on getting these demos out and getting more people to register for the demo. So this was the original page. And we decided our hypothesis for this test was by changing the button text from requested demo to free demo, and by changing the button color, we will improve click engagement. Now, one interesting thing about this test is it's not a crazy radical redesign. We just made a few simple changes here. Third step is to test with experiments, and this is where the idea of split testing or A/B testing comes in. So you can see here we have our original page, we have our test variation, and we actually split traffic so that 50% saw the original page, the other 50% saw the test variation with our free demo button. And we measure which one of these pages produced more clicks. So you can see how this is a very much a scientifically controlled experiment that helps you really quantify these changes that you're making. So instead of just guessing, now we're going to be able to actually measure the results of something like this. So the last two steps: analyze your results, formulate a conclusion. Here are the actual results of this test, and you can see we saw almost 100% improvement. So over the course of 12 months, this company doubled the number of people that requested a free demo. And a lot of those people ended up actually purchasing the software. So this is a very successful test, and really a great example of simplicity and in execution, and having a result that really had a strong impact for the company. So let's look at a case study here. This is a Consumers Credit Union. They're out in Carnegie, and they came to us and they said, we want more people to sign up for our free checking account. And so what you see here on their original page, there's a lot of copy, chunks of paragraph, and they've got a big neon video, and we thought the value proposition was a little weak. The goal of the test was to get more people to click on this Apply Now button, right? So our test hypothesis was by moving distractions on the page and strengthening the value proposition and using bullet points so it's easier to scan and digest the information, we felt that this would provide more people clicking on this Apply Now button. So here's the test setup. This is the original page on the left, and this is our test variation. So you can see we made a much stronger headline. Instead of just checking, we said free checking with interest. We removed the video because we really thought it was a distraction. We wanted to get people right into the benefits, and it moved the Apply Now button towards the top. And again, the value proposition was much more direct, 100% free checking with interest and rewards. So again, 50% went through the original, 50% through our test variation, and the results was 141% improvement in Apply Now clicks. So again, a very simple test, and over the course of 12 months, this winning variation is going to produce an additional 3,400 clicks. So your tests don't have to be overly complicated. You don't have to show a variation that has a completely different design. Sometimes there's a need for that. But what I have found in my experience, as long as you have a strong test hypothesis, a strong goal in mind, a lot of these fairly simple tests can produce some really, really good results for you. And again, the nice thing is that we can quantify these results. So we know that if we institute this winning variation, that the expectation is over the next 12 months, an additional 3,400 clicks they would not have gotten. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of how testing can produce unexpected results. I think we all get caught in this idea of best practices, and for example, video always works better than static images. And you know what? Video typically does work better than static images, but not always. So I wanted to show you an example here. This is Brookdale Assisted Living, and the goal of this test was to get people to click on this blue button. I'm not sure if you can read it there, but the blue button says, find a community near you. So the original page used a static image of a resident, and the test variation used a very compelling video. I no longer have the video, but it ran about, I think about 90 seconds, and it interviewed actual residents saying how much they love staying at Brookdale Assisted Living, and they get treated well. It actually was quite emotional, very, very well done. And so they pitted these two, the original and the variation, against each other. And the results were quite interesting, because the static image actually recorded a 4% increase in clicks on this button. And 4% improvement may not sound like a lot, but for Brookdale, it was an extra $100,000 a month. So one simple test provided them an incremental revenue of $1 million, over $1 million over a 12-month period. So a great example of how we make assumptions that, oh, we should all be producing videos. Videos always work better than static images. And here's a great example of, had they gone with the video, they would have lost $1 million in a 12-month period. So again, never make assumptions on what's going to work or what's not going to work. Everything should be tested on your site. And I guarantee you'll run into some very interesting surprises during your tests. One question I get a lot is, how do you decide what to test? And so these are 4 basic principles that we use in our testing program. And if you really focus on these 4 ideas, you'll be able to use them and come up with lots of great ideas, lots of great test ideas on your own site. So the first is reducing distraction, reducing anxiety, improving clarity and relevance of your value proposition, and improving motivation and urgency. So I'd like to take you through some examples of each of these 4 principles so you can kind of get a better feel of just what we're talking about. The first one here is Beretta. And this was a test to reduce distraction. So we have found some very powerful test results when we actually remove things from the page. I think we all feel like we need to add more stuff to our pages, right? More information, more pictures, more whatever, more links. And we have found that that can cause a very high cognitive load and make it difficult to assimilate the page. So we've had some very strong tests where we just remove the unnecessary and keep the essential. We've had really good results doing that. So let's take a look at this test. This is Beretta's men's clothing area. And you can see the original page here on the left. You've got jackets and you've got sweaters and vests. And you've got all this paragraph of copy explaining these sections, right? And so really our hypothesis here was that these descriptive paragraphs were not really providing any value. They're really acting more as a distraction. I mean, we really felt that the vast majority of people are going to know the difference between a jacket, a sweater, and a vest. You really don't need to go into an explanation of what they are, okay? So we removed all that. And so you can see in our test variation, it's much easier to scan. It actually brought more products above the fold as well, which is a nice advantage. But we took off all of the paragraph copy and just said what they were, just to see if more people would click into those product areas and how that would affect transactions. So the results of this were stunning. I was not expecting results quite this good. They saw the test variation 1 without the copy, a 54% improvement in transactions and a 74% improvement in revenue per visitor. So over a 12-month period, this is going to bring Beretta an additional 6,000 transactions that they didn't have before. So again, a very, very simple test of how removing the unessential can really have a positive impact on your bottom line. Principle number 2 is reducing anxiety. And we're going to look at the Joint Commission. And in fact, this is the very same example that you just saw when we talked about the scientific method. So we, again, just as a reminder, we changed this button from requested demo to free demo. So just this word free can do a lot to reduce anxiety. So when you're going through your site and you're thinking about, is there anything on my pages that might be causing anxiety, really concentrate on the wording and the copy. We have found that just by changing the copy, being more direct, and throwing in more words that tend to reduce anxiety, it's had some great success. And if you remember from this test, they saw almost 100% improvement in people clicking on the free demo. Principle number 3 is improving clarity and relevance. And this is really mostly tied into your value proposition. So I see all the time on landing pages, a headline with a very weak value proposition, right? So tests that involve clarity and value propositions can be very, very powerful. And so in this Dale Carnegie example, you can see this page on the left, you can see it's just really a mess. You've got these banners, or are they just informational squares? What are they? You've got these testimonials. You have sort of a discombobulated value proposition up here. And so this is our test variation. And you can see, for one, it's much easier to scan. We created a banner with, I think, a much stronger value proposition, reach your highest potential. We got a mountain climber heading towards that peak. And really the most important thing we did is we bullet pointed the benefits of each of these areas. Now, the main goal of this test was to get more people to click on this purple button. And we also used some very different testimonials that we felt were much more powerful. So the results of this test were good. We saw a 550% improvement in clicks on that purple button. And that translated to an additional 6,000 clicks over a 12-month period. So, and this is more of, you can see the differences between these two. I would call this test a radical redesign test. So instead of just testing one little thing at a time and seeing the effect of that one change, we decided to change lots of things. Now, when we do this, we lose granularity of understanding how all the different changes really interact with each other to produce the improvement. But the benefit is that, especially if you've got a page that's not getting a lot of traffic, these radical redesign tests can really provide very, very powerful results in a short period of time. Okay. Principle number 4 is improving motivation and urgency, and we'll show you an example from WeatherTech. WeatherTech makes car mats, and on the left here was their original page. WeatherTech had an offer that if you add a front floor liner to your order and a cargo liner, a rear liner to your order, you get free shipping on one of the items. But they really weren't communicating this special offer. And so in our test variation, we just made it front and center. So anytime somebody put in a front floor liner, we just made a big, huge reminder that if you add a cargo liner, you can save on shipping. So this is really a no-brainer. You almost don't have to test something like this, but we wanted to really quantify what the additional revenue would be if we did make the offer front and center. Results, 28.5% improvement in revenue per visitor. And this is what I like to call my $1 million test. This test produced WeatherTech over $1 million in a 12-month period. So again, a good example of a fairly simple test that we ran. I think this test took about 7-8 days to run. So in 7-8 days, we came up with a winner that's going to produce them over $1 million of incremental revenue. So really think about this, and I guess I would encourage you as sort of a homework assignment is to go back to your websites, look at your most important pages, and really think about these 4 areas, and just kind of brainstorm and see if you can come up with 2 or 3 test ideas in each of these areas for your top pages. Okay, we're going to play my favorite game called Which Test Won. So I'm going to show you an original page and a variation, and I want you to raise your hand and let me know which one you think won. Now, I will say a couple things. One, I'm not trying to trick you. Well, not too much. Might be trying to trick you a little bit, but not too much. And go with your gut instinct. And I'll tell you that when I play this game, I'm wrong 50% of the time. So I'm a very bad guesser. Hopefully you'll be a better guesser than I am. So here's the first one. So this is Electronic Arts. They had a game called SimCity, and the original page, it's a good game. I played SimCity. Anybody play SimCity? Yeah, a little bit. This is the original page. They had a pre-order banner. Get $20 off of your next purchase if you pre-order. That was the original page. And for the test variation, they decided just to remove that pre-order banner and just see what would happen. So 50% of the traffic saw the pre-order banner, the other 50% did not. So who thinks the original page with the pre-order promotional banner won? Okay, so maybe about half. Okay, so the results of this were really surprising, and I thought the banner was going to win as well. The original had a 5.8% purchase conversion, and the one without the banner had a 10.2% conversion. So I don't know why. You'd think that any sort of promotional banner is going to generate more interest, but again, this is a great example of why you have to test. Even best practices, I've seen what we call best practices work terribly on some sites and work very, very well on other sites. So everything must be tested, and this is a great example of sort of a reverse logic that worked quite well for Electronic Arts. So here's another one. This is HubSpot, and you can see the original form on the left here and the variation. They decided to put a very pleasant-looking person up there with a nice smile, sort of inviting, and they also reiterated the offer. I can't quite read that. It says, see what you were waiting for, grab a demo today, and it points towards the form itself. Who thinks that this test variation produced more requested demo button clicks? Again, about half. Okay. The other people who are not raising their hands, I know you think I'm trying to trick you here. And I did trick you. Because surprisingly, the original page beat the variation by 24%, right? So, and I originally thought that this was going to be, this one was going to be the winner. So an interesting surprise there. Here's another one, another best practice that says trust seals reduce anxiety, right? So this is a email sign-up form. The original had a trust seal, and the test variation did not have that trust seal. So the idea, the hypothesis is that by adding a trust seal close to the submit button, it reduces anxiety and improves people that click on that submit button. So who thinks the test variation without the trust seal won? About a little less than half, okay? And you are right. The version without the trust seal. Now, I've run lots of experiments with trust seals, and they typically, most of the time they work. But here's a situation where it didn't work. And you might be able to, I don't know if everybody really recognizes trustee. It's not, I don't think, one of the most popular ones. So this could have actually increased anxiety if people didn't recognize this trust seal. So a good follow-up test, a good iteration for this test would be to try a different trust seal and see how that would affect things. So a question that I get all the time is, how do you start a successful test program? And so I'm going to go through what I call five essential steps for successful testing. So number one is really trying to figure out where your problem pages are. Number two is understanding visitor needs. 3 is coming up with test ideas. 4 is actually running these test ideas. And 5 is making sure you measure and document your success. So let me go through each of these areas and kind of give you some practical examples of the tools that I use to come up with some of these problem pages. So my first recommendation is Google Analytics or whatever web program you happen to have on your website. And what you're seeing here is a page report that shows bounce rates. So for those of you that may not know, a bounce is when somebody comes to a page in your site and leaves without clicking on anything, right? So a high bounce rate is bad, a low bounce rate is good. And so you can see here in this particular report, for this site, and this is an actual client site, they have an average bounce rate site-wide of 50%. And what I've done is I've located pages with a much higher than 50% bounce rate. And so this allows us to sort of pinpoint problem pages that we really want to focus on when we first started doing testing on a site. And this is something that is easy for you guys to do as well. Another tool that I love is called Hotjar. It runs about $29 a month, so it's very inexpensive. And Hotjar allows you to set up funnels, visual funnels in your site. So you can set up, if you've got a single page form and you've got 12 form fields, you can set up each form field as a step within the process. You can also set this up for like a checkout. If you've got like a 4 or 5 page multi-checkout, you can set it up there. And this example is interesting. So this example is a single page form, and you can see here there's a 40% drop off when they get to the form field that asks for the phone number. Right? So this can give you a great idea of a test that you might want to run. In this case, we ran a test where we didn't make it necessary for people to add their phone number, and it drastically improved form completions. So a great way, make sure you're visualizing all the different funnels on your site so you can understand where all the various drop-off points are. And if you see one drop-off point that seems to be worse than the others, then you can focus some tests on those areas and make improvements. Understanding your visitor needs is the second step. And these are the 4 questions I would encourage all of you to ask your web visitors. Why do they come to your website? What stopped them from converting? Did they find what they were looking for? If they did convert, was there anything that almost stopped them? And a couple tools that I would recommend, Hotjar and Qualaroo allow you to set up these exit surveys. You may have seen these as you're going through different sites. They typically pop up in the lower right corner. And the technology tracks the movement of the visitor's mouse. So if it looks like they're about to hit the back button or close out their browser, this little survey pops up in the lower right corner, And we typically ask, what's the purpose of your visit? Did you find what you were looking for? If not, were you able to complete the goal of your visit? And if not, why? And you can get a lot of great qualitative information from an exit survey that you can use to come up with really strong test ideas. Also, page-level surveys. So instead of trying to catch somebody right when they're about to abandon the site and ask you more general questions, page-level surveys allow you to focus on a very, very specific page. It might be a PPC landing page, or it might be a form page, and you can ask things like, if you didn't sign up today, what was it that stopped you? And you'd be surprised how many people actually take the time and give you feedback on these page-level and exit surveys. My experience has been you get about a 2 to 5% take rate on these. So they can be a great way to really start to understand where your visitors are having problems and where the friction points are on your site. Another tool that we like very much is UserTesting.com. This is a third-party tool. And this allows you to set up 3 or 4 things that you want to watch people do on your site. And you will get an audio and video of the people talking their way through these various tasks. And so you can ask things like, well, find our newsletter registration page and sign up for our newsletter, or find this particular product and add it to your shopping cart. I mean, you're on your sites all day, every day, and you know how to do these things. But when you see somebody trying to do it for the first time, you'll be surprised. And this is a great way to uncover some friction points that you can parlay into some very strong test ideas. Third step is to come up with actual test ideas. And my recommendation for you is to start small. So look at changing a headline or look at changing an image and see how that works for you. The important thing is to get a couple wins under your belt so that you can communicate this to your company and get buy-in for expanding the program. Focus your ideas on these 4 testing principles we just talked about, and don't be afraid to make some big, fearless changes. What I like to say is that subtle tests often lead to subtle results. So if you're going to change your checkout button from red to green, don't expect much to happen from that. I would try it, do some button color tests, but don't expect a major difference just from changing a button color. Really think about changing things like your value proposition or testing 2 very completely different promotions. Your first 10 tests are really all about building momentum and validating the process. So if you want more test ideas, I created a list of 100 test ideas that you can download for free. This will get you started. And you're going to get copies of this presentation, so you'll get this link and you can download that. And I've got test ideas in every different section of a retail site, and also talk about lead gen sites. So out of these 100 tests, each of you should be able to find at least 30, 40 that are directly applicable to your business, and it'll get you going. Step 4 is to actually run your first test. And for that, I recommend Optimizely. Optimizely is a split testing platform that's been around for about 6 years. I've used a lot of different platforms, and in my opinion, Optimizely is the best. And the thing I like really most about them is that you can sign up for a free account, and you can run up to 50,000 people through your tests per month. So it's a great way to get acclimated to the idea of testing, kind of dip your toes into the water without having to make a huge investment. Okay, and I'll show you. This is the actual interface, the visual editor within Optimizely. So you can see, basically you can click on an element and you've got options. You can edit the HTML. You can change the text. You can change the button color. You can make the button bigger or smaller. You can move things around on the page. So it's sort of drag and drop, and it makes it very easy for you to quickly create a variation of your page and then run the split test immediately. And the nice thing about Optimizely is it tells you when you can stop running your test. So in this case, we have a variation that is showing a 13.5% improvement, and we have a statistical significance of 99%, which means there's less than a 1% chance that this winning variation is due to random fluctuation. So that's another thing. It's very important to run your test to at least 90% statistical significance so that you can feel comfortable that the winning variation truly is a winning variation. Last one is to measure and document your success. And my recommendation is quite simple. Just use a spreadsheet. And this is just a partial view of the spreadsheet that I use. You can see that I log the results. I have links to the Optimizely test results. So if I need to go back and take a look at the actual statistical results, I can do that. I estimate the projection improvements over a 12-month period. And then any sort of next actions or any additional test iterations that we can come up with, we document those as well. So again, just summarizing, identify your problem pages. Google Analytics and Hotjar is a great way to do that. Understand your visitor needs using exit and page level surveys. Hotjar and Qualaroo are great third-party tools for that. UserTesting is another third-party tool that will help you sort of understand the different friction points in your site. Come up with test ideas. You've got the 4 test principles that you can use for guidance, and download that list of 100 test ideas to really get you going. Run your first test using Optimizely, and then measure and document your success using a simple spreadsheet. So let's look at a final case study. This involves Dale Carnegie, one of the largest corporate training companies in the world. And they came to us and said, can you help us get more people to register for our newsletter? And so this is what they had in the footer of their site. It just says join our mailing list, right? So there's really no context. What am I going to get if I join your mailing list? There's really no benefit, right? There's no communication of a value proposition. And so we actually came up with 3 different variations. We're pretty much variations all in the same theme. But the big thing is that we added a benefit statement. Join our newsletter, get exclusive content, tips, and special offers. And we created a version that had the social icons on this side, social icons on this side, and then in this version we removed them all together and placed them lower in the footer. So all 3 of these had drastic improvements, but it was variation 3 that showed a 523% improvement. And the nice thing about this too is that we tie this experiment into the Google Analytics account. And you can see when we implemented the winning variation, you can see that newsletter registrations start going up immediately. So this was a great test. Not only did Optimizely validate the winning variation, but we were able to go into Google Analytics and show the client, show Dale Carnegie, that yes, in fact, you are seeing immediately improvements just from this single test. So if you are interested in testing and you want some help, what we offer is I will actually help you get a pilot test running on your site free of charge. So all you have to do, and in your folders there's a little document that explains this as well, but all you need to do is go to Optimizely and get your free account and pass me your login credentials. And one thing I'll do is I'll let Optimizely know that you're working with me to start your first test, because if I don't, the Optimizely salespeople will start attacking you from all different areas. And we don't want that to happen. So pass me your credentials. I'll make sure Optimizely knows you're working with me. And I will come up with a test idea. We'll get on the phone. I'll build out the test in Optimizely. I'll show you how it's built out. And if you agree that this is a strong test, we'll run it. We'll let it run for a week or 2, and then I'll get back on the phone with you to discuss the results. It's a really good way for you to, again, just see how an actual test runs on your site. A couple of other areas that we can help you with. We can help you with foundational work. So we talked about exit surveys, page level surveys, user testing. If you don't have a lot of qualitative information and you want us to help you kind of collect that and get these third-party tools up and running for you in a very quick manner, we can do that. We also can help you develop and come up with some very, very strong website objectives, goals, and key performance indicators if you haven't gone through that exercise before. And we typically will also create custom dashboards in Google Analytics so that as we're doing all these tests, you can see all these dials and KPIs moving in the right direction. We also do a lot of companies come to us and they want us to perform a heuristic site analysis, which means we go into your site, spend 3-4 hours going through all the different sections, and just based on our knowledge, we'll come up and give you back 25-30 prioritized test ideas. We also provide training, so if you happen to have a team that's doing some testing and you're having some difficulty, you're not getting the results you want, I can come in, work with your team for a day, do some training, and help move things in the right direction. And we also have companies that use us as an extension of their testing team. They've got 3 or 4 people that are doing testing, but then we get on the phone once a week, we brainstorm new test ideas, and we build out the more complicated ones, and they build out the simpler ones and optimizely. And then I would say the bulk of what we do also is testing retainers. So companies will come to us and they'll spend anywhere from 30 to 50 hours a month, and we put up tests every week, 2-3 tests a week. We have weekly phone calls where we talk about tests that have won and what our recommendations are as far as implementation. We talk about tests that are currently running on the site and when we can stop them. And then we talk about tests we have in the queue and additional test ideas that we want to work on next. And so it's been very, very popular way to really kind of build up a testing program very quickly. And my last slide, or one of my last slides here, is to really encourage you to check out these 2 books. So when we're working with a client, we really use a lot of psychological principles based on the work mostly of Robert Cialdini. And also Robert Dooley has got a really good book called Brainfluence, which really talks about the psychology of persuasion and how you can get people to take more of the actions you want. So what I'm finding, especially over the past few years, there's a melding of marketing and really web psychology to really better understand how to persuade and encourage and motivate people to take more of the actions you want them to take on your site. And split testing is just a fabulous way to do that on a regular basis. So with split testing, think of your site as continuously evolving and improving over time. Instead of just letting your site run and every couple of years, trying to make a quantum change to it, you're testing concepts and ideas on a weekly basis and really quantifying and understanding what works and what doesn't work. And you're implementing the winning variations, but even if something loses, there's still something to be learned and gained from a losing test. And then also in your packets, we have the Americaneagle.com Eagle Vision. This is devoted to split testing, so it'll give you a lot of additional information and concepts on how split testing works and how we might be able to help you if you're interested in getting something going within your company. And that is it. How long did this go? Did I talk for 45 minutes? Okay. All right, so I'd like to open it up to questions. First of all, I have a question for you. Does anybody in the room currently have a split test running on their site? Raise your hand. Good. Excellent. Yeah, usually when I ask that question, nobody raises their hand. So I'm glad to see that a few of you have gotten involved in it. Obviously SEO and PPC are still the main strategies that people are using with their websites. But I'm finding more and more, and if you look at Google Trends, you'll see the phrase A/B testing, the interest level has really risen the past couple of years. So this is really a competitive advantage because I can say, pretty definitively that I can be confident that your competitors are not doing this. So it's really an opportunity. If you get started now, it's definitely a competitive advantage. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this point. Yeah, Ryan.
Even with positive results, what's the shelf life? Some of these tests, these case studies you had very positive results after 12 months. At what point do you then question those results and try and...
Yeah, so for critical tests that are showing massive increases, I do tend to like to run those every 3-4 months just to make sure we're getting the same results. One of my colleagues, Chris Goward from Wider Funnel, has done a lot of research in this area, and he has found in 99% of the cases these winning variations do hold in the long term. But I tend to like to, again, especially for tests that are showing massive improvements, I do tend to like to rerun those on a fairly regular basis just to make sure that there wasn't any sort of anomalies in the initial test. That Beretta test I showed you, where we had over 6,000 new transactions over the course of a year, we reran that test 3 separate times because I really had a hard time believing the results were that good. But we reran it a second time. A couple months later, we ran it a third time, and we got the same results, which is good. Yes, sir.
Do you find that age demographics are a factor in the outcome of a test? So, for example, Sims,
Yeah.
test that you had, it seemed like the millennial is very, very patient,
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody who is in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Do you see differences based on your
Yeah.
target consumer?
Yeah, we can. We really haven't discussed that in this presentation, but what we do on the back end of a test is we segment results. So we may find that a particular test in aggregate is a big winner, but when we segment the results and look at new visitors versus returning visitors, sometimes we find that we maximized new visitors, but we made things worse for returning visitors. And so when we learn things like that, we start to get now into personalization, where you're not always showing the same value proposition to the same demographic. So think of split testing as the foundation to really understand where the opportunities of personalization are on your site. But that's a good point. Now you're talking about segmenting results based on age. It gets to be a little bit tricky. You can do it, but you have to kind of merge Google Analytics with your CRM system so that you can pull in people by age. And if you've got the ability to do that, then we can take our Optimizely test results, bring it into Google Analytics, and we can actually segment by age and by male and female, which is great. So, if you're running big, large tests like WeatherTech gets tons of traffic, we're able to do a lot of interesting segmentation so that we can really have a better understanding of where we did optimize and maybe where we didn't optimize. And for the segments that didn't optimize well, then we can run tests focused on that segment to see if we can make improvements. Yeah?
Follow-up, do most clients have their privacy policies allow you to get access to that kind of segmented data? Or is that a rarity, or is that more common?
Well, I'm talking about, if your CRM system has, customer information, Google Analytics doesn't want you to be able to identify specific individuals. But you can bring CRM information that doesn't identify certain individuals, right, and still, deal with the Google policy on that, on the privacy policy. So really, what you really want to do when you're segmenting your results, to your point, you want to segment by age, perhaps, and you want to segment by male and female, but you're still not able to identify who those individuals are. So that pretty much takes care of the privacy issue. Yeah, yes, sir.
If we get the retainer, will you guys have the Optimizely tool like to use as an agency, or do we have to install it individually? And also, what's the retainer value?
What is the last part?
Retainer cost?
Retainer cost? Yeah, well, typically we go either 30 to 50 hour retainers, and it's whatever your hourly rate is with us. So typically, it could be 150 an hour, and then we're working whatever the retainer happens to be. If it's 20 hours, we typically focus less on more radical tests and try to do more medium type tests. If you've got something like a 50-hour retainer with us, like WeatherTech has, we can get into very sophisticated tests where we're doing a lot of design changes and radical redesigns, because we typically get faster results that way. And then with Optimizely, if you work with us on a retainer, depending on the amount of traffic your site gets, if your site is getting less than, say, 70, 80,000 visits a month, if you're less than that, then we'll use the free version of Optimizely. So the only cost on your end is the retainer cost. Now, if you've got a site that's getting 200,000-300,000 visits a month, then we need to get on a professional version of Optimizely, and that then can run anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 a year. So Optimizely signs year-long contracts. You have to make a year-long commitment with them. And again, typically it's between $20,000 and $25,000 to use that platform. But, if you're not getting close to maybe 80,000, 90,000 visitors per month, we've had a lot of success just using the free version of Optimizely. They let you run up to 50,000 unique visitors through your test per month, which is pretty generous. Any other questions? Yeah, Ryan.
On the form fills, was there any measurements or testing done on something like a phone number or email address being a required field as opposed to not?
Yeah, we typically try to run those as much as we can. Dale Carnegie was a good example. Well, with Dale Carnegie, they refused to reduce their form fields. And if you go to the Dale Carnegie site, their form fields, I mean, they've got like 15 different things that you've got to fill out. It's ridiculous. And we really try to convince them to reduce some of those, but they felt that it was very, very important for their salespeople to have all that information. But I still see situations where form fields are too long, you're asking for too much information, and in almost every single case, if we've been able to reduce some of those and shorten the form field, it's really an anxiety test, right? When somebody gets to a page and they see a huge long form, most people are not going to be really interested in filling out all the information, especially if it's required. And you can see that one slide I showed you where there was a 40% drop-off when people got to the form field with a phone number. Most people don't want to give their phone number. But as long as you've got an email and a contact name and a company name, it should be all you really need to take the next step. So in that case, by removing the phone number field, I mean, we like doubled form submissions.
I guess there's a way that you can A/B test through mobile versus the desktop version.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it depends on the type of site. So I work a lot of the sites I work with are responsive. So as you shrink the screen down, it all reorients so that it looks good in mobile. But I am working with some companies that have a separate mobile site and a separate desktop site. So in Optimizely, if we want to focus specifically on a mobile test, I set an audience condition that says only people who are using mobile phones will be invited into this test. And if they're using a desktop, then they won't be invited into the test. So you can be very selective about who you want to take part in a test. So another example would be if you've got a very large PPC program and you want to run a split test that only involves people coming to your site from a PPC ad. So we can create an audience segment that just allows people from a very specific PPC ad to be part of an experiment. So there's a lot of flexibility in who you want to be part of experiment and who you might want to exclude in an experiment. We also have the ability to ratchet down the invite rate. So if we're doing a site-wide test and we don't want to include everybody, I've got a little slider bar and we can bring it down to 50%. So only 50% of the people coming to the site will be part of the experiment and the other will see the site as normal. So a lot of different flexibilities in making decisions on who we're trying to test, what the goals of the test are, and that can better inform who we want to set up as the main audience. So we can actually run tests for people who are coming to your site from the search engines, direct traffic, email campaign traffic. We can isolate all those different types of audience segments and run tests just for them. Yeah, Brian.
I know in PPC we often run 3 different versions of ad copy. We do testing against that. Is A called A/B testing? Do you ever do an A/B and a C?
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, we've got this ubiquitous term called A/B testing, but in a lot of cases, if the site gets enough traffic, I might do an A/B/C/D test. So we've got the original. We've got maybe 3 or 4 different variations. So we might want to test, and your learnings are quicker that way. So if I want to test 4 different value propositions, if I test them sequentially, just with just a single variation, it could take me many months. But if the page is getting enough traffic, I can create 4 or 5 different variations with all those different value propositions, and we can get results within a few weeks. And so the learnings are much faster. And that really comes down to test velocity, right? The more traffic you have, the more tests that we can get up, the more results we can get, and the more progress you can make. You got people like, has anybody heard the story about Google? Google tested 40 different shades of blue on their homepage. 40 different shades. One of the testers on the team left because they were just disgusted having to actually test 40 different shades of blue. And the person who's in charge of that was Marissa Mayer at the time. She's still with Yahoo now, I think. But yeah, she was very methodical in her testing. 40 shades of blue, and they found the one shade, they got the most clicks, so works. Yeah.
Do you find when you're doing A/B tests, let's say you're testing something on the home page, and then there's down the funnel, your product page, your checkout, your thank you page and such, should you do everything on the home page first, do all those tests, and then start going down the funnel?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming it's not wise to test on the home and do another test on the product page at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So when we formulate a testing program for somebody, the first step we take is we create visual funnels of all the different important funnels on the site. So, for a typical retail site, you're talking about homepage, category page, list page, product detail page, and then the checkout process. So when we're testing, we want to make sure that we're testing throughout all stages of the funnel. And depending on the test we're running, we may be able to do that all simultaneously, or we may need to do it in chunks. But your point is well taken. If you're doing a test on the homepage is the very first part of the funnel. So if you're doing a test on the homepage, having a goal of transactions is probably not good, because a lot of things can happen between somebody visiting a homepage and somebody actually then buying a product, right? So we basically, when we're doing tests that are on the front end of the funnel, our goals are oriented towards the front end of the funnel. And as we get more into the middle of the funnel, that's we can look at, we might do a test on a listing page, and the main goal is to get more product detail page views. And then we might do a couple goals that are further down the funnel, like add to cart clicks and then transactions. But we do have to be careful. For every test that we come up with, we have a primary goal, and then we usually have a few secondary goals that are further down the funnel. In the case of the Beretta, remember when we removed that descriptive text on the Beretta category page? I was not expecting transactions to be affected that much. And had I not put that in there as a goal, I would have missed a really good opportunity. The real goal of that test was to get more people to click into those category areas. But I was shocked that had such a huge effect on transactions. So you just got to be careful of what the primary goal of the test is, but also making sure you are putting some goals in there that are further down the funnel, so you can really start to understand how a test at the beginning of the funnel is affecting the downstream parts of the funnel as well. So it's a good point. Good question. So for those of you who are testing, a couple of you raised your hands there. Are you testing, as far as test velocity, how many tests per year would you say you're running? Or are you just sort of dabbling in it at this point?
Do a couple tests a week, depending on, again, if it's making sure we're not hitting multiple people,
Okay, good.
the same person is involved in multiple campaigns. But I usually plan out 6 to 8 months in advance of what test is going to go here, and then once we have that one, then we'll go to the next one, and so on and so forth.
Nice.
So we've probably got 25 tests from now until December.
Great. Do you use any programs like Basecamp to help prioritize? And
I actually just downloaded an Optimize Leader toolkit.
Oh, good.
Spreadsheet that I built
Yeah,
out.
good.
I personally use VWO for testing.
Okay. Yeah, that's another good testing platform. Good. All right. Any other questions I can answer for you? It's kind of hard to ask questions when all the food's coming out. So I will be around afterwards. If you have, a one-on-one question you want to ask me, feel free. So enjoy your lunch, and thank you again for coming. I appreciate your time.